Hi crafters, Raquel here from Paints and Glitter. I'm coming along for Paper Rose Studio, and today I'm going to be sharing some cards with you. I'm going to be using the Pastel Patterns 1.0 12x12 paper collection, and I'm also going to be using some stamps and dies. So let me share the dies with you that I selected. I really like this one here, and this is called Hand Stitching Coverplate Metal Die. So I'm going to try to focus on this primarily. And then I did pick up the Ornate Elements metal die. I thought that was so very pretty and very delicate to pair along with the pastel colors. And then as far as sentiments are concerned, I did pick up this beautiful thank you collection of stamps. They do come with matching dies. This is called Thank You. Very aptly named. And you can pause the video there if you would like to, so you can see how many different versions of thank you so much, and thanks, and then all these other little phrases such as you're the best friend ever, you're so thoughtful. So reasons to give thanks to anyone that you love or a good friend. I thought that was absolutely darling. And of course, if it comes with matching dies, all the better. Let me show you the papers, however, so that way you get to see how darling these are. So the first thing is that these are printed on 200 GSM card. They're also available in 6x6 sizes, but they will vary, and there's often ephemera included in these collections. So I do invite you to take the links that I'll have in the description bar of all of my videos that have Paper Rose stated on there. Take a peek at what's available. You're going to want to take a look at all the gorgeous papers that Paper Rose has for you. Now on the back of this, in typical style, Paper Rose loves to give you free sentiments. So here you get to see that you have birthday, you have Mother's Day, you have best wishes, thinking of you, love your smile, thank you, just all sorts of different sentiments that you can use for any type of project. And I think I mentioned these are all printed on 200 GSM card, so they're nice and sturdy. Now if you like a particular paper, there is a label at the bottom with the name, so that way if you want to go back to the page and purchase a 24 pack of any one design, then you'll be able to do that by simply plugging in the name. So this is Pastel Patterns 1.0A as in alpha. It's got a lavender background, and look at those gorgeous watercolored flowers, absolutely stunning with yellows, pinks, and greens. And then on the back of that you get an ombre polka dot that goes from lavender to a very light green with a little bit of yellow in between. And at the bottom, all of those little strips with the names will also have color on the opposite side, so you can definitely use those. Here is a lavender background with tiny little polka dots, and then these little platters or plates with florals in the center. This is Pastel Patterns 1.0B. And then on the other side, there's this really beautiful ivory with the lavender pattern of those leaves, reminiscent of older wallpaper almost. And then there's that light green at the bottom. Here's Pastel Patterns 1.0C as in Charlie, and it's got a white background and then a darker lavender leaf pattern throughout. Very darling. And then on the opposite of that, you get another ombre card that starts off with a lighter blue, goes into lavender, a lighter lavender, and ends up with a yellow and then almost a greenish yellow at the bottom. So very, very pretty. Pastel Patterns 1.0D as in David has a white background with very light blue polka dots in the background as well, and then these floral patterns with the lavender leaf here and there, and then the rest have different colors of green, and the roses are just so very pretty. I love watercolor, so this speaks to my heart. I think it's so very sweet. Here you have again that ombre look, only this time it is striped, so you get a you get a diagonal white stripe on top of that ombre that starts off with the green. That's very, very light, goes into the yellow, then the pink, and then all the way to the lavender at the bottom. Here again, you get those little medallions or plates, and then the background here is a minty green. That color around the platter is more of a peach color. This is Pastel Patterns 1.0E as in Echo, and then on the back of that, you get that green color in the leaves as well. Pastel Patterns 1.0F as in Frank has the pink leaf pattern on white. Very soft and very pretty. And then the background of that is again that ombre look. However, it goes from blue to pink to lavender to blue again, and then it has the diagonal white stripe, again with those little stripes at the bottom that you can use. And the patterns repeat themselves, so that way you have plenty of opportunity to create with these papers. So I will be back with some samples for you. For these cards, I'm going to be using these thank you stamps, which are really lovely. I really like all of the varieties. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave the inside of the cards blank. I'm going to make them super, super simple. And I'm going to select this thank you sentiment here. And I'm going to match it up with the die that will cut it out. So I'm going to simply take my stamp platform, which I have here, and I have a piece of white cardstock. I love using leftover card bases and that sort of thing, so that way I know it's a nice thick card, because I'm going to make all three cards the same way for this sample. I am going to be matching it with this gorgeous paper, which I've cut out at 5 1/2 by 4 1/4 to fit on top of the card base. I'll show you the rest in a moment, but first I'm going to pick out some ink that I think will look pretty with this paper, and that will be what I use for the sentiment. Here I have a selection of archival inks, and I think they're nice and pretty, and those are designed by Wendy Vecchi, so they're nice and vibrant. And what I'm going to do is use the color violet. There's a very light violet in one of the leaves on this paper, so I thought that would look really sweet. And it's a nice break from the traditional black sentiment, which there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but you know, it's good to vary things up every once in a while and just make things colorful. And you'll see why in a moment. And I'm simply going to stamp that. And the great thing about a stamp platform, if you're new to stamping, of course, is that if you don't have strong hands, as I do, my hands are not the strongest, then you can stamp it multiple times and get a really nice clear impression when you're doing your stamping. So here I have one. It's not my favorite right now because the stamp was not conditioned, and all that means is that there's usually a little bit of a leftover material from how photopolymer stamps are made. So you sometimes have to take an eraser or just your fingers and remove some of that film, so that way you get a clearer stamp. Or you can condition it with ink by stamping it a couple of times, and then your stamp's going to be nice and ready. Now I'm going to clean mine because I accidentally got paper towel on it, and that's much clearer immediately. And I'm going to continue this until I get the nicest, crispest thank you there. Like a nice crisp image when I'm stamping. And that's absolutely perfect there. So I'm going to repeat that a couple more times, giving this room, of course, because I will be die cutting these sentiments. And there we go. That's the third application. It's super crisp. So what I'm going to do now is match the die to the sentiment. Here I have my little sentiments all cut out and ready to go. Super pretty. And my card bases are from Paper Rose. They come just like this, ready to go. And as you can see here, they're top folding, USA size, which is 4 1/4 inch by 5 1/2 inch. And they are top folding, which is my personal preference. So you get a total of 20 white cards, and they are 300 GSM, which is perfect as a foundation for a card that can sit on a table and it's not going to bend or bow. So I've cut out my little papers accordingly to just layer right on top. And they're a slight bit shorter than the base on purpose, so that way I can accommodate the paper nicely here. But I'm simply going to take some Nouveau Deluxe adhesive, which is my preferred wet adhesive, to make sure that these are nicely adhered onto this card. Now this paper is just a floral pattern, but always open your card and make sure that it's facing the correct way so that you don't get an accidental upside downy card, especially if you're using a particular pattern that's applied. I have this other layer. Now what I've created here is a white layer with all of this beautiful texture using this die here, and this is the hand stitching Coverplate metal die. It does not cut an edge, however I went ahead and cut it at a diagonal here, and I'm going to be fitting this on the bottom of my card. And I thought it would be really sweet if it has a thinner border on this one edge here. I'm going to cut that edge just slightly there, so that way it looks just as thin as the other end here. And I suppose I need to put it in my paper cutter this way. Now these little papers, the perforations can fall out so that you can stitch onto this if you would like to. But I'm going to cut this at 4 1/8 inches wide. So I think I'm going to be happier with that. And that's going to go right along the bottom. I'm going to place that there first. And I just loved the way that die looks with the texture. And of course you can color these little spaces if you'd like to. And absolutely you can stitch that as well. So I might revisit this and do exactly that, but I'm going to pull this all the way over to the edge. Then you can apply some pressure there. Now I could leave this card just as it is, and this could be just absolutely darling and complete in this manner. However, I've gone ahead and taken another die set from Paper Rose. This one is called Ornate Elements metal die. As you can see there, it has 4 flourishes there. So I've selected 2 of them and cut them out of white cardstock, as you see here, and then I've also adhered these onto vellum and just cut around the perimeter there. And I'm going to be placing these right on the edge of that white card and the thinner ones at the end. And I might need to cut away a little portion of this. I'm not quite sure just yet. But I'm going to position these here just to create a bit of a border. And I think that what I'm going to do here is cut the one end here. Just cut that straight across, giving myself a tiny little edge here. So I'm going to cut these right where the little heart ends there, that heart shape. And this will allow me the amount of room that I need. So I'm going to apply adhesive here, or the little apertures. I'm going to avoid those, and then I'm going to simply place these along the edge strategically here on one end, and overlapping just about half of that onto the white paper. And I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite end. So I'm going to do this one toward the end, overlapping that right along the middle. So once again, I'm going to try to avoid the apertures as much as possible here. So you need very little adhesive application, and using these tweezers is very, very nice because that way it holds the paper for me. And especially when you're using white paper, so that you don't get too many oils from your fingers all over the place, it's nice to use a pair of tweezers. I really like the way that that looks. It's quite delicate but elegant. And now I can place my thank you I think on the bottom left there, I think it really stands out nicely. So I believe that's what I'm going to do. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to do to this card is that I'm going to use a Nuvo Dream Drop. This happens to be in the color Indigo Eclipse, and I just really like it. I'm going to shake it up a little bit here because it does have a tendency to separate. And I'm simply going to use a minute amount here to drop onto this card. Always test it off to the side whenever possible. And I'm going to kind of fill in those little gaps created by the paper there to create little pearls. So delicate and pretty. I love it. And it's tempting to keep filling, but I'm just going to add one more in the center here. Just like that. And that's going to complete that card. So very pretty. I love that this looks just like a watercolor. I think it's absolutely darling. So I'm going to repeat this a couple more times to create a set. And here I have all of my items cut out. This is wonderful if you're having a party where you are creating cards to donate with your friends, or if you like to gift a stack of cards as a Christmas gift or Mother's Day, and you just can bundle these together, tie a pretty ribbon around them, and you can gift them, or if you'd like, as I often do, you can donate them to an organization to send to people who may be in a hospital, or you can donate them to your church. Any number of things that you can do, so that way they are received by those who would appreciate them. Now again, I'm going to cut this down, as I had said before, to 4 1/8, approximately here. Now you may be wondering how I was able to cut this accurately. I simply use these nice sharp scissors, and I followed that leaf pattern, avoiding the stitching line, so that way I could get a really nice scallop on that paper. But of course you could cut it in the shape that you prefer. I mean, there's so much that you can do here. Now you'll notice that some of the little pieces of paper fell out of that, but it's of no consequence. Still works. I'm typically not so generous with the adhesive, but because this paper is quite textured, then I want to make sure that all of it will adhere fully, and that way I don't get any gaps, and that's why I went ahead and applied adhesive to the entire background there. And then I always like to use a tool such as a spatula to apply pressure to make sure that I don't get any buckling. Now if you would like to, you can only apply adhesive around the outer edges as an idea, and then use this as a little pocket inside of a journal or for a gift card. That would be super easy to use, and I think that that would give a really nice elegant look to any gift giving. And if you like that idea, then of course you could switch out this paper in the background and use it, for instance, with a Christmas paper or birthday paper, whatever you like, depending on the celebration. And then you'd have a really pretty pocket. Now that I have this completely assembled, I'm going to switch the drop color. This one's called Gold Luxe, and it's also a dream drop, which just means that it has a pearlescent finish, which I think is absolutely darling for a nice delicate card such as this. And of course you can make those pearls in different sizes, so if you happen to make one a little bit bigger, another one smaller, I don't think that's a problem. That's the second one with golden pearls. Okay, so here is my little card trio. Easy cards that you can make in less than 15 minutes by just prepping all of your materials. Some super quick and easy stamping. And of course, if you have dies that you enjoy using that will either add texture or will allow you to cut out a sentiment, it does make it a whole lot easier. And then having prepared card bases just makes it super fun because there's no math involved really, so long as your paper fits onto that 4.5 or 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch base, then you're good to go. And of course, quality materials matter, which is why I do recommend Paper Rose. You're going to get fully saturated, beautiful papers that make all of your cards look professional because the finish is sometimes a little satiny, so they're not always fully matte, but it does give that paper a tiny bit of sheen. And if you don't enjoy just having the simplicity of a white on white, for instance, you can always take a look at the paper collection. There is always matching ephemera, and there are always the ones that you can pop out of the background as well. So that may be more suitable to your liking. And if you don't enjoy florals, of course, you can always just use the other side of the papers, whether it be the ombre stripes or anything like that. For instance, there is the one paper in this collection that has these little green leaves. So with this paper, I have another sample that you can look at. I'll go ahead and link that video below so that you get to see the exclusive stamp set that was also released with Stamptember for Simon Says Stamp, in case you're interested in that. So that way you get to see how many other choices you have, of course, with Paper Rose. There's so much to look at on the website. You could spend quite a bit of time peeking around and seeing what they have available for your paper crafting. So I do hope that this is helpful to you. You get to learn maybe just one little simple technique in card making. It doesn't need to be complicated for it to be fun. And as I always say, I do hope that you can be inspired and be blessed. And I thank you so much for watching.